Let's dive right into this explainer because today we're exploring a pretty wild concept, how the literal design of our cities might be secretly making us lonely. I mean, have you ever wondered why you can live in a sprawling metropolis packed with millions of people, yet still feel completely isolated? Well, we're going to unpack the hidden blueprints of our built environment. We'll look at exactly how our streets, our buildings, and our public spaces are actively shaping our social lives, and unfortunately, often for the worse.
The psychologist Carl Jung actually hit the nail on the head when he said, loneliness does not come from having no people around, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important. It perfectly captures the paradox of the modern city, right? Isolation isn't just about physical solitude. You can literally be standing shoulder to shoulder with strangers on a packed subway or living in a massive high-rise and still feel totally disconnected. And that's because modern urban design has accidentally, and sometimes intentionally, engineered this exact feeling right into our daily lives.
Here's our roadmap for this explainer. We'll start off with the loneliness epidemic itself, then we'll see how our spaces are built for cars instead of people. After that, we'll unpack hostile architecture, discuss the crucial need for third places, and finally wrap up with how we can actually design for human connection.
All right, part one, the loneliness epidemic.
So, to put this in perspective, according to the U.S. Surgeon General, a staggering 79% of young adults aged 18 to 24 report feeling lonely. 79%. This isn't just some fleeting emotion, it's a full-blown public health crisis. To give you an idea of how serious this is, the premature death risk associated with this level of social isolation is literally comparable to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. And the crazy thing is, cities actually carry a significantly higher risk of depression and anxiety compared to rural areas. And this is a truly global issue. Data from the European Union shows that the COVID-19 pandemic acted as this brutal stress test for our social infrastructure. It pushed self-reported loneliness rates from 12% all the way up to 25%, so 1 in 4 citizens. Frankly, our cities completely failed the test.
Now, a trap we often fall into is confusing physical proximity with actual social connection. Take the compact micro-dwellings of Hong Kong, for example. Residents are living in extreme close quarters. But here's the catch. Extreme density without any shared spaces actually just intensifies that feeling of isolation. Think about it. If there is nowhere to gather, awkwardly bumping into your neighbor in a tiny, characterless hallway doesn't build community. It mostly just builds friction.
Which brings us to part two, built for cars, not people.
A lot of this traces back to a massive clash of two urban planning philosophies. On one side, you had planners like Robert Moses, who basically looked at a city and saw a machine meant for processing traffic. He famously tore right through thriving, dense neighborhoods to build these massive highways. On the other side, you had activists like Jane Jacobs. She fought tooth and nail for walkable streets, mixed-use vitality, and what she called eyes on the street. But unfortunately for us, for most of the 20th century, that vision of the city as a machine for cars totally won out.
And when we go all in on car dependency like that, we're basically designing a discriminatory cage. Just think about it. If you're too young, too old, disabled, or if you simply can't afford the massive financial burden of car ownership, which, by the way, can cost upwards of $11,000 a year, you are effectively locked out of society. Plus, being stuck inside a car actively eliminates those small, random daily encounters with strangers on the sidewalk. And those little moments are absolutely crucial for developing social skills and a real sense of belonging.
It's wild, but something as simple as the physical width of your street literally dictates your social life. Research shows that a 34-foot wide street is just too wide to comfortably have a cross-street conversation with your neighbor. You'd be shouting. But if you narrow that street to 26 feet, traffic is forced to slow down, the whole area becomes quieter, and suddenly, neighbors can actually chat with each other right from their front yards. It's a perfect example of how design dictates behavior.
Let's move on to part 3, hostile architecture and exclusion.
So, hostile architecture is essentially an urban design philosophy that treats human beings as problems to be managed, rather than lives to be lived. Instead of trying to create welcoming public spaces, it weaponizes the built environment. It deliberately makes lingering uncomfortable, or in some cases, outright impossible.
It's fascinating and a bit depressing to see how even award-winning designs, like the Camden Bench in London, are engineered specifically to make resting impossible. They use slanted surfaces and zero flat areas, so you literally cannot lie down. And we see these tactics of exclusion popping up all over the globe. We're talking anti-homeless spikes outside banks in Mumbai, or timed sprinklers set up solely to soak public encampments at night. Now, you might think these designs are only targeting the homeless,
But the psychological toll actually affects all of us. Every single person who walks past those spikes absorbs this subconscious lesson that public spaces are a privilege, not a right. It just creates this sterile, paranoid environment. The clear message is this space is not for you, and the ultimate goal is just to keep people moving along, rather than actually allowing us to stop and connect.
All right, moving into part 4, the need for third places.
Have you ever heard of a third place? The sociologist Ray Oldenburg actually coined this brilliant term. He identified third places as the real connective tissue of a functioning society. Basically, your first place is home, your second place is work, and your third place, that's the informal gathering spot. It's where we go simply for the pleasure of good company, completely free from the obligations of family at home or the stress of your boss at work. Just think about the kinds of spots that used to be absolutely everywhere. The local pub, the corner barber shop, the neighborhood cafe, or honestly, even just a welcoming front porch. Over time, we've systematically eliminated these vital places through super rigid zoning laws that aggressively separate commercial businesses from residential life. When it literally becomes illegal to open a tiny corner store in a residential neighborhood, you're actively destroying the organic hubs of community life.
We've also lost our physical in-between spaces. In more traditional environments, like the incredibly vibrant courtyards of Jaipur or the shared corridors of Mumbai's older Chawls, those spaces acted as daily social platforms. But modern layouts, they usually reduce human circulation to these narrow, characterless corridors. You leave your private apartment, you step into an empty elevator, walk through a totally sterile lobby, and hop straight into your isolated car.
Which brings us to our final section, Part 5, Designing for Human Connection.
The contrast here is actually pretty striking. On one hand, you have the architecture of separation. Think monotonous block housing or endless sprawling suburbs. But on the other hand, we have the architecture of connection. Look at projects like the 8 House in Denmark or the Kalkbræt housing in Switzerland. They use continuous pathways and shared communal terraces to organically foster human connection. And the best part is, they pull this off without sacrificing anyone's personal privacy.
And you know, we don't always need to build some billion-dollar megastructure to fix this. Sometimes, simple interventions work wonders. Instead of placing park benches in straight lines, just angle them towards each other. It naturally encourages a nod or a quick conversation. We can mix residential and commercial zoning to bring cafes back into our neighborhoods. Copenhagen proved this works beautifully by pedestrianizing their main street. It creates this human-scale design that practically begs you to linger, people watch, and enjoy those unplanned interactions. Honestly, it's impossible to overstate just how critical this is. There was a landmark study of a historic Chicago heat wave, and it found that neighborhoods with better social connections actually experienced far fewer deaths during the disaster. It makes sense, right? When neighbors actually know each other, they check on each other. So social interaction isn't just some nice little bonus to urban living. It is literally the most significant predictor of human health and resilience. It even surpasses physical activity. We really need to bring back these neighborhood-scale institutions and public spaces. We need environments that wrap people in overlapping networks of support, whether we're talking about community gardens, local social clubs, or honestly just wide sidewalks with some nice trees and inviting storefronts. Our built environment needs to be treated like the essential public health tool that it is.
So here's what I want you to do. The next time you walk out your front door, really take a look around. Look at the width of your street. Notice the placement of the benches. Check the distance to the nearest coffee shop. The architecture of loneliness isn't just inevitable. It's a choice, and it's a choice that we absolutely have the power to unmake. I'll leave you with this. If your city is a machine, who was it really designed for? Are we consciously designing for connection, or are we unknowingly constructing our own isolation?